I want to just tell you two brief experiences I've had in public training sessions using the two patterns that you've discussed here, the Swish pattern and the classic code and the anchoring pattern in demonstrations, and where all the variables have been present and interesting things have emerged. And I love interesting things. And then after this, we're going to pave the way into how the new code would deal with these interesting things. A couple of years ago, I was running a practitioner training with John Grinder and Carmen and my other colleague, John Thompson, in the new Connaught Rooms in central London. And we were running actually two courses at the same time. One was a trainer's track, one was a practitioner's track. And I went into the practitioner track. We're doing like, you'd go upstairs and do a segment, you'd come downstairs and do a segment. And it was a really fantastic experience for the trainer to be able to alternate between these two groups of people. We mixed all the groups up together as well, so all the trainers were teaching practitioners. It was fantastic. So now I went in there to teach the Swish. To teach the Swish. I was in the program to teach the Swish. And every now and again, I would do multiple demonstrations, meaning I'll have more than one person, so everybody can see different people going into state at different speeds. And I normally do this eliciting involuntary signals, because you can really calibrate people doing involuntary signals. The Swish is not as easy to do because it's a bit more linear. But anyway, I had 4 people up demonstrating the Swish, standing on a stage like this. One was on public speaking fear. The other 2 escapes my memory. The one that is on my memory clearly is a knuckle cracker. Now, have you ever come across a knuckle cracker? Well, this lady used to sit, and I was so glad she came up, because she used to sit in the front row. Every time she had a revelation, which is quite frequent on an NLP course, she would go, oh, no, it's not finished yet. And then go, and again, on the little knuckle, it's like a glockenspiel. Can you imagine sitting next to her? You imagine her on the front row. And it is an unconscious thing, predominantly. So when I said, has anybody got a specific pattern that they would like to explore that is isolated, would you like to be the demo? Lo and behold, she's up. Now, the way the Swish, by the way, was written out originally in using your brain for a change is an external trigger. You look at an external trigger, which is now biting. You look at what is the first step in the neuro-linguistic program, or what we used to call in the classic code, the strategy. Personally, I think if you get the internal trigger, the very first part, you're going to get much more generative change. So we managed with each of them to isolate their triggers. So what you were saying there, in isolating a very specific trigger for the thing they wanted to change, is a fundamental part of the pattern. So each of them had isolated their trigger through my work, and each of them, as you quite rightly pointed out, had an clear outcome image as to how they wanted to be. Now, I'd like you to think about where this outside image comes from. That's the thing I'd like you to think about. They've created this image as to how they want to be. And the idea of the Swish is you swish it in so that this now becomes linked to the old trigger. And it's the next sequence in the same unit of behaviour. That's a very important part. So you're not kind of bringing in something completely different. It's like instead of doing this, she might just do this or something else. It stays in the same logical level and the same logical type. So anyway, did the Swish. Here she was. We're all up on the platform. I'm going along, slingshot style. And you can see when you do this, quite visible changes occurring. But, when it's working and they're really getting in touch with their internal triggers, in there. And I've got to say, after the demo, the others sat down as well, and she sat down. I was in and out of the room all afternoon, just observing discreetly. No knuckle cracking. Job done. So I thought. The next morning, I said to her, and I won't mention her name on the tape, I said, how's it going? And she looked really knackered, right? Tired, that means, by the way, for those of you who are not from this country. It's a slang word, right? She looked really tired. And I said, how's it going on with knuckle cracking? She said, no knuckle cracking. She said, but I've been up all night, cracking every other bone in my body. Got no desire to do this. Do you think that's interesting? Had I done all the operational variables in the Swish? Had I got the change that she wanted, that she selected? You bet. Had I got a generative change? No way. Because all it did, it went somewhere else in her system. Does that make sense? And it was actually, by the way, called her up because that was the best demo that that audience could see. It's far better than one that she come in the morning and said, oh, no knuckle cracking. You know, perfect, isn't it? Because people saw where a demo had been executed well, but they saw the constraints of the pattern. And you learn far more when you see the constraints of the pattern.